Hello everyone, I'm Aaron Dusk, aka The Literate Beast. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different, as you can probably tell from the uh, the video of Jenna Moreci sitting right here on my desktop. This is kind of a reactionary video, but it's not quite, considering I've already watched this and had some things to say about it. Jenna has her fair share of haters out there, and I just want to make it clear that I'm not one of them. I genuinely enjoy watching her content, even if I disagree with a lot of what she says. So this is not yet another let's all hate on Jenna Moreci video. In fact, I agree with quite a lot of what she says here. The writing community is, well, as from the title of this video, it's like writers suck. What? Not necessarily. I guess that's kind of clickbaity, writers suck. But really, what she's saying is that the writing community kind of sucks. And yeah, it's a very special community in a lot of negative ways. It doesn't matter if it's on Twitter or Reddit. You're going to encounter a lot of these same people. And when you think about it, what better way to spark engagement than to participate in dogpiling, negative rhetoric, super hot political takes, lots of virtue signaling, and spreading rumors about other authors? It's like when you have no real organic following on social media, and most of who you see and interact with are bitter and delusional writers, you're likely not going to be attracting would-be readers to your space. In fact, you may be pushing them away without realizing it. So, I for one stopped following the writing community a long time ago because there's only so much whining and negativity I could take, especially since we're all kind of in the same boat, if you think about it. It's become less of a place for advice on writing and publishing and more of a place to just whine about life or attack other writers. It wasn't something I wanted to scroll through every day, so I ended up unfollowing just about every author in the writing community. So with that out of the way, let's get to Jenna Moreci. She is also a self-published author, and she's got a few books. She's most notable for her Savior series. She's also developed quite a bit of an infamous reputation for her hot takes and authoritative tips on writing. Or they can come across that way to more sensitive writers. To be fair, she never states these are her opinions, so newer writers might take what she says as being like true to the fact or the way it is, when really they are just opinions. Like I said earlier, I disagree with a lot of her opinions and tips, but I also agree with them. Well, I also agree with a lot as well. So she has a ton of videos on these topics, one of which I'll obviously be commenting on here. Also, to the Jenna haters out there, you can say what you will, but she's made quite a name for herself, and she's worked her ass off to get where she is, all while struggling with, stressful real life issues. None of this stuff comes easy to anyone, really, and we all have real life problems that can interfere with our writing careers. But to be successful, you have to step out of your comfort zone and learn to take your negatives and turn them into positives. Jenna Moreci seems to have done that with all of the stuff that's going on in her life, and she seems to be pretty comfortable within the marketing microcosm that she excels at. I mean, she's obviously very good at marketing. She's got thousands of reviews. She's probably had thousands and thousands of book sales, and she's just a self-published author like I am. So, with that out of the way, let's get into the comments.
Oh.
Actually, the whole reason why I'm restarting this video is because I completely forgot to mute my microphone. Let's see if I remember to do that from now on.
Now that that's out of the way, let's get to the 10 worst parts of the writing community. If you hate this shit too, you're in good company. Number 1, the superiority complex. You're a writer, an artist, a visionary. Other people become nurses and plumbers, but you create worlds. You explore symbology and themes. You bless the world with your brilliance, and that brilliance in particular is big titty alien women having sex with stranded astronauts. Look.
Okay, so one thing about Jenna is she's very, very expressive in a lot of her videos, which is why a lot of people follow her, a lot of people like her. But she has a point here. There are, if you've gone to a lot of these writing communities, especially, this is more true probably on Reddit than on Twitter. Reddit seems to bring out a lot of people who seem to have this superiority complex about their own writing. Like everybody else is just kind of subpar, but their writing is just so good. But they don't understand why, these shitty writers are getting all of the views and the reads while their work sits, gathering dust. Like nobody understands their genius. Nobody can quite get or grasp their prose, like in their symbolism and their meanings. And when you actually go to look at their writing, there's a reason for that, and that reason is that their writing isn't as good as they think it is, or their writing might be great, but their personality just turns a lot of people off. Like as an author, you need to have some sort of decorum when dealing with the general public, especially other writers, because if you piss off the wrong people, it could backfire on you. And unfortunately, and this shouldn't be the case at all, but unfortunately, these same authors can come back and, find your books and leave negative reviews without even having read your book. So, and this has happened with a lot of people. Most notably would be J.M. Arlen, for example. He, ended up pissing off the wrong people, and have all these people leaving reviews on his Goodreads and Amazon that haven't even read his book. Now, granted, his book is really bad. I mean, it's pretty. It really could use a lot of. It really could have used a lot of editing. I'm not going to get into that here. I think Reads with Rachel did a whole segment on that author. So if you want to go and check out her video, but just be careful with who you're pissing off in the writing community, and don't come across as a complete asshole.
An art form, but being an artist doesn't inherently make you superior. And there is no art within the community that is superior to other art within the community. You're not better because you write literary fiction as opposed to speculative fiction.
This is also something I wanted to bring up as well, and it's kind of something I fall into as well. Like sometimes I'll get this in my head that certain forms of writing are inferior to other forms of writing, and it's not really a good mindset to be in, because they all serve a purpose. And people, just because one form of writing may not be as popular, it doesn't mean that there aren't people out there that enjoy it. Just because I don't enjoy things like poetry or fan fiction doesn't mean that they are just that they are inferior forms of writing. Now, I have lots of opinions about them, but that doesn't mean that people aren't enjoying them at the same time. And I'm not here to yuck someone else's yum in that sort of sense. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff on Archive of Our Own that I really don't like, but it's also, people read it all the time, so it's not really an inferior form of writing. It's just a different type of writing.
And you're not better because you write epic fantasy as opposed to urban fantasy. You can respect your work and be confident in it and passionate about it without being a dick. Number 2, the rambling. One of the reasons I started my channel is because it was really hard to find quality writing advice. Sure, there was a ton of advice out there, but it felt more like a bunch of writers jerking themselves off.
Yeah, and you'll see this more on Reddit. Like I said before, Reddit seems to be the place where all of the worst people go to congregate. Twitter, there's only, unless you have like the blue check mark, there's only so much you can fit into a Twitter post. And you're not going to really find a lot of writing advice on Twitter. But on Reddit, oh boy, yeah, it's there, and it's not good. Very rarely do you get, especially in the writing subreddit, very rarely do you get actual like professional editors that will come in there and give advice. And you can tell the people that know their shit, because they will give very good advice, and especially what editors look for when they're going through a writer's fiction or a writer's book in general, and they will point out all of the pitfalls that they normally see and how to avoid those in the first place, or to do self-editing yourself before it even goes to an editor, so that you get the most bang for your buck. Obviously, you don't want the editor having to comb through a bunch of simple mistakes where he or she may be missing the bigger picture, or something even more detrimental, because they're so busy fixing every single grammar and spelling mistake that you've made that you should have probably fixed yourself. That's not when you go to have your manuscript line edited, for example. The grammar and the spelling, yeah, it comes secondary. That should have been what was taken care of in the first round of self-editing. What they're looking for is continuity, word choice, cadence, your use of different, your use of words, how you're using the prose. All of that stuff is very important. And if they're having to consume most of their time fixing spelling and grammar mistakes, then you're basically wasting your money at that point. So that was a tangent. Getting back to the writing advice, yeah, on Reddit you get writing advice from people that don't really know what the hell they're talking about. And in fact, these are usually like part-time writers. They're people that have never really published anything. When you look at a lot of people on these writing subreddits, unless you're specifically going to the self-publishing subreddit, a lot of these writers have not published anything. They haven't queried letters. They haven't gone the self-publishing route. They barely know how to even self-edit. They don't know how to correct any of their errors because they're not experienced enough writers to be able to do that in the first place. So they're really not that experienced to be giving advice, especially to newer writers too. So they end up getting raked over the coals by other writers, which in a way is kind of toxic in itself. The writing community can be incredibly toxic, especially when you've got, writers out there who think that they know it all and then shit all over writers who may get it wrong. Instead of correcting them, it's more of like, let's just insult everybody for not understanding everything there is to know about writing. And I hate to break it to you, but you can be pretty good at writing and still not know everything, and still have your ass handed to you by someone with more experience. And I've done that before to other people, and other people have done it to me before. So usually in a more respectful manner, but still.
They'd go on, beating around the bush, making everything so flowery and nuanced. We get it, you love to hear yourself talk. The truth is, a lot of this shit ain't that complicated. You don't need to wax poetic in order to help people improve their writing. Get to the fucking point! I'm not saying all writing blogs and channels are like this, I'm just saying it would be a whole lot more helpful if the writing community as a whole could be straightforward. Number 3. Competition. A large part of the writing community is very supportive. They're all about lifting each other up. But there's also a segment that pits writers against writers. They see other writers, particularly those within their genre, as competition. I can't wrap my head around this. You do know that people can read multiple books at the same time, right?
So there are some things that I agree with. There's also some things I disagree with this as well. One, she's being very, very nice to the writing community here, because there's not really a lot of support in the writing community without a lot of backstabbing, and that's kind of what she's getting into here as well. In a way, yeah, other authors are your competition, but in a way that it shouldn't be. It shouldn't come across as being resentful, or you purposely going out of your way to sabotage someone because you're jealous of that other writer, and vice versa. I don't really have a lot of writer friends anymore because a while ago I did have some writer friends, no author friends, they're just writer friends. And there were times when, there were lots of times when what I would post on websites would get a lot of traction and a lot of readers, and a lot of what they were posting didn't really get anything at all. So I could tell there was a lot of resentment there, especially in when people would come across as being very friendly, but at the same time there was always that doublespeak going on. There was always that two-faced. Always those backhanded compliments sort of thing, kind of insulting your intelligence in a way while also pretending to be your friend. There was a lot of that, and that's one of the reasons I don't have any writer friends, and I don't want to make any, and I certainly don't want to make any author friends either. Not unless we're on the same level, as far as we're at the same place in our writing career. that we can actually benefit from one another instead of being resentful of one another, if that makes any sense. Because I mean, it can happen to anybody. I mean, I've had the, you know, the green eyes every now and then where it's just, I'm envious of other writers that have made it and have somehow, you know, gotten through the space that I'm still struggling in. And that's not a good way to be, and it's not a good way to think of your writing, because overall it can come across as really hurting your career in the long run if you're constantly comparing yourself to other writers. So, but at the same time, yes, other writers are competition, and you have to realize that, because, you know, they're, for instance, Jenna Moreci, she's very accomplished. She's a very accomplished self-published author. Why wouldn't you want to learn from her? Like, why wouldn't you want to see what she does, figure out the secret sauce, and kind of emulate that in your own writing? Now, when I say emulate, I don't mean plagiarize or straight up copy somebody or somebody's idea. I mean, take the things that work for her, the tropes that she's used, and make them your own. Try to come up with your own way of doing things, but kind of copy that, or try to emulate that secret sauce, as I said before, that she has, or that other authors have. You know, you don't want to just stick to one author. You want to read all of these authors, which are in a way your competition. Their books are directly competing against your books too. And yeah, while readers can go out and pick up another book, chances are it's not going to be your book. Chances are they're going to be picking up traditionally published books. If it comes down to a self-published author's book in the same genre, or a traditionally published book, who do you think that the reader is going to make the time investment, or the risk? It's really a risk. What do you think they're going to make the investment in? It's usually going to be the traditional published author, because they've been vetted, they've been edited, all that kind of stuff. There's a quality there, whereas you don't know if you're getting that with a self-published book. And other self-published authors are competitive against other self-published authors as well in the same genre. You obviously don't want to be completely just completely buried by another self-published author who's publishing in the same genre you are. You want to do sort of what they're doing and try to elevate yourself, to their level or past their level, because you want people not getting fatigued on a certain genre. They might read your competition's book and then decide, I don't want to read any more fantasy this time. I'm going to go read a thriller or something else like that. So they may not even come back to your book. So yeah, while readers can read multiple books, chances are they're not going to come back and get invested in yet another fantasy or something in the same genre, or that's something similar to the book that they just fell in love with. They're not probably going to go back and read your book. Or if they really, really hated that book, chances are they're probably done with this altogether, and they're probably going to go and read something else. So you want to do you as a writer want to do everything you can to have your book be the first book that people read. That's just the way it is. So I kind of disagree with her here about other authors not being competition.
Doing yourself no favors. Number 4, men writing women. Don't worry, I don't mean all men, but if you're offended by this point...
Okay, well, first of all, I really have nothing to comment on this, considering the fact that I don't usually write about boobs. I don't really write about heteronormal relationships, which usually doesn't involve me really writing intimacy with women. Now, there was, okay, with When Life Gives You Werewolves, I had written, a couple of sex scenes between Willa and Darius, but that was, that's not my normal audience. My normal audience wants, gay monster romance. That's what I'm known for. That's what I write. So I'm not really going to go into this too much, but if you are a guy, a straight guy especially, and you're writing women, just be aware of word choices and how your prose comes across, because if read it, here's a good rule of thumb with any sex scene at all. Go back and read it out loud. And if you can read it out loud, if you can get through it without laughing, then you've probably made a decent sex scene, but if you're reading through it and you can't help but laugh or cringe at a lot of the word choices that you make, I would say probably go back through and and make some changes. If boobs are if boobs have somehow developed their own laws of physics and they become sentient or alive, as Jenna Moreci has just said, then you're probably devoting a little too much attention on the body parts instead of the person. So, be aware of that. Like I said, straight men are gonna write whatever they want. I don't really care. It's not really in my genre. It's not really on my radar. So I'm gonna skip past this.
Got it. Number 5, the girl boss. You know exactly who she is, but let me paint a picture anyway. She's a 30-something-year-old white woman in a shit marriage with a few punk-ass kids. She reads young adult fiction exclusively, but demands that the category feature far more smut. Nothing gets her going quite like teenage genitalia. She thinks diversity in fiction and the writing community is a personal attack against her rights. How dare anyone threaten her ability to write about a self-insert getting railed by a ferryman? And she
So just take away ferryman and insert any kind of beast, monster, and you have anything that I write. But she's kind of right in this as well. There are, if you're going to, a lot of these readers and writers never really grow out of a certain genre. So if I shouldn't say genre, it's more of age group. If you're going to, like, let's say that you read a lot of YA when you were, a teenager or a young adult, eventually you're going to outgrow it in a way. You shouldn't expect YA to grow with you. That's sort of what new adult and adult is for. You need to graduate and go to those books. I can understand, some people still being in the same mindset as the main characters in YA. I don't know whether that's a sad thing or just preference, but yeah, at this point, if you're 34 and you're still reading YA, you need to read it for what it is. It's for a YA audience, meaning young adult, meaning, I think it's in the age group of like 15 to 17. The main characters are usually 15 to 17-ish, even 18-ish. So yeah, I don't wanting to have more explicit sex between teenagers in these types of books is not a good look. It's certainly not something that I would want to see in a YA book. If I read YA, I would not want to see teenagers depicted as explicitly having sex. Like, just go to the new adult, go to the adult fiction if you want that kind of stuff, if you want that kind of spice, and leave YA alone. YA, like I said, is for teenagers, and they don't need to be reading. I mean, they're not old enough to get into R-rated movies by themselves, and they're not old enough to watch NC-17 movies. Why should they write, or why should they read explicit X-rated sex written by an adult between two minors? Like, no, we shouldn't want that, and you shouldn't want kids reading that anyways. So now I will say that, in the Mark of Amuli, Alex was 17. He was, of course, 2 months away from 18, but he was still 17 when I wrote, the sex scene between him and Amuli. And yeah, that kind of got a little awkward. And I still kind of, even reading back on it, I'm like, oh, God, I wish I would have made him a little older. But at the same time, I probably could have. I could have probably made him a couple months older. It just wouldn't have had the impact that the story should have had, especially the conflict between his parents at that age. So, yeah, say what you will, that was a choice, but it was ultimately my choice to make. So, but at the same time, the sex was explicit, and the book is in no way rated for YA audiences. I make it very clear that this is an adult book. It is not a YA book. So, adults are going to read it, and not, hopefully not underage teenagers. So, anyways, we're just going to skip past this. I think she makes her point here, and I do agree I do agree to a certain extent. Obviously, actually, you know what? Let's continue reading it, or let's continue watching it, because she does kind of go into a spiel that I don't really like.
She's all about uplifting other women, so long as they're also 30-something-year-old white women in loveless marriages. You can probably find her by the decorative cursive font on her website or the All Lives Matter banner on her Instagram bio. But really, there are 1,000 girl bosses in every single online young adult book group harassing teenagers and generally just being awful human beings, so
Yeah, there wasn't at all a bit of stereotyping going on there. So yeah, we don't. One thing about Jenna is, and the writing community as a whole, is it tends to skew pretty far to one side, and you know what that side is. So not every 34-year-old Karen is this white woman with an all lives matter and a police flag. I don't know what they're called, but like police lives matter, and all over their pages. That's kind of a stereotype. It's lots of adults tend to read YA that fit into this category that are of a different political spectrum. So let's kind of not put people into one bubble. I know why she did it. Like I said, it gets views. I mean, if you're constantly putting another group of people down, if you're constantly stereotyping people, then it gets a lot of views, obviously. But I don't agree with her here. I really don't think that she should have played into that narrative. But anyways, we'll continue on.
They should be pretty easy to spot. Number 6, gatekeepers. You're not a real writer if you write romance. You're not a serious fantasy writer if you don't write epic fantasy. All female writers must write young adult fiction. This is so dumb. Writers are supposed to be creative. How can—
So here, I do agree with a lot of what she says. There's a lot of belittling going on in the writing community by other authors who may write. Especially this happens a lot. This seems to happen a lot with people who write nonfiction, like memoirs, or people who write a lot of high fantasy or realistic sci-fi. They think that if you write romance or if you write a fantasy romance, you're not really writing. That's not a real genre. You're not really writing anything substantial. This is all brain rot for the readers. And to that I have to say, fuck you. It's just, reading is reading. As long as people are reading and they're reading what they enjoy, they're getting some sort of entertainment out of it, why aren't you supporting it? You should be wanting more and more people to be reading, so that this way they can, or they will want to graduate up to your level of writing, whatever that may be at this point. Usually people that are gatekeeping this stuff are usually not very good writers themselves. But you should want readers reading as much as they can, regardless of what level they're at or what genre they're reading. I tend to pick a lot on fan fiction. Sometimes as well. I know in my last video I basically said some self-published authors just take the serial numbers off of their Wattpad fan fiction and post it online as if that was some sort of an insult. But fan fiction writers are legitimate writers too. They may not be published writers, but they are writing for a certain audience. And reading is reading. You want people reading. Even if it's mind rot or brain rot to you, it may be what that other, what those readers want to read at the time or need to read at the time. Maybe they're having, maybe they're in a really tough relationship, or they're having, a tough time at home, and they don't really have access to books or to libraries or whatever. And the only thing they seem to have access to is their phone and this fan fiction that somebody has written that they've fallen in love with. Well, it's not really anybody else's place to tell that reader that they're wrong for liking that kind of fiction. It's not right, and it's something that a lot of people need to reevaluate the gatekeeping in this community.
And you, with your vast imagination, pigeonhole people into these hyper-specific groups. And a lot of the best fiction out there defies stereotypes. That's kind of the point. Breaking boundaries is what artists are supposed to do. Let people tell the stories they want to tell. If it's not hurting anyone, why does it matter? Writing is supposed really kills the vibe. Number 7, writing isn't a business. You're exchanging a product for money, but sure, it's not a business at all. You're an artist, not a businessman. You'll let someone else handle the money. Who is this mystical person who's supposed to care more about the success of your novel than you do? I hate to break it to you, but your publisher isn't gonna market you for shit. In fact, you probably won't get signed unless you have already started to build your author platform. And you're definitely not gonna find any magical free marketing as an indie writer. But still, literally every day I see some writer go, meh, I'll skip the business stuff. It's not my thing. I hope.
So this kind of ties in a lot with what I, with my self-publishing video as well. You've got to become your own marketer. You've got to be your own salesperson. And she's absolutely right about this. If you're wanting to become a published author and you want to actually sell books, then you have to treat writing as a business. It becomes a business at that point. The moment that you put a book online to be sold or for somebody to buy it, it becomes a product. And a product sells when the business sells it. So you're your own business at that point, whether you like it or not. So you've got to do your own marketing. You've got to do your own research in this case as well. And this is something that Jenna Moreci very much excels at. I think she even has a course on shit. I forgot what the what the place is called, but she's got a course on there that kind of goes into the whole marketing aspect of writing. And I haven't taken it personally, but you know, I'm quite sure that she has a lot of good information in there, a lot of good advice, considering the fact that she's done it. She's obviously doing it now. So yeah, she knows the business side of writing, and everybody should. I mean, it doesn't matter how introverted you are or how averse to the business side of this you are. Even if you're going down the traditional publishing route, you've still got to treat writing as a business. Just because you publish a book doesn't automatically mean people are going to read your book. Nobody's going to know you exist. There's too many writers out there right now.
Book sales aren't your thing either, because you won't be getting any of those. Number 8. Scammers. For just $5,000, you can learn how to become a best-selling author from someone who isn't a best-selling author.
Now, I'm not going to go too much into this one because I kind of mentioned this before in my self-published video. This is more about people who are, and they typically come to the writing community specifically to sell their courses. You know, this is how I made X amount of money, and you can do it too. Usually these are scams. There's also a lot of people who will sell vanity press services to authors, and really the only people that fall for these scams are desperate writers. And to be honest, a lot of us are desperate to get our books in the hands of people, are desperate to make book sales. We want our name out there. We want to be a well-known author. We all want to be bestsellers. We all want to break out. But no one person can ever promise that. And if they do, that's a huge red flag as it is. Nobody's going to automatically sell 6,000 copies of your book in a month. That's just not going to happen. Especially if you're a self-published author. You can't promise something like that. Who are you going to sell the 6,000 books to? What kind of marketing are you doing? I mean, and what kind of marketing are you doing that's only going to cost $6,000? And you're probably going, only $6,000? No, $6,000 is chump change compared to what it normally costs to publish a book and market it heavily like that to be able to generate that kind of traffic to buy your book. It would cost a lot more than $6,000 to do that. So if anybody's promising these absolutely insane numbers in such a relatively short period of time, that's usually a scammers. And unfortunately, the writing community is just chock full of these scammers.
For giving your money to anyone. Number 9, the representation is a prison writer. You mean to tell me it's more realistic to include some characters of color in my novel? How dare you aim to improve my writing while also broadening and respecting my readership? Don't you know you're shackling me? Destroying my creativity? Because nothing sounds creative quite like writing the same character over and over again. What do you mean art requires growth and learning? What do you mean progress is a natural part of any skill? I want to be a big baby forever. You can pry these bigoted cliches out of my cold, dead hands. And
This is another thing I greatly disagree with Jenna Moreci on. Growing as a writer doesn't necessarily mean inserting every single minority into every single piece of fiction that you write. I don't want to read about gay characters from a straight author that has absolutely no desire to write gay characters, and you can see that in the way that they come across in the writing. They're just token characters. They're there for representation. I don't want to be represented like that. That's not a representation of who I am. That's not a representation of the gay community in general. Just like, people are constantly trying to shoehorn in diversity wherever it is, or wherever they can, be it, and the biggest flavor of the month right now are like non-binary and trans characters. Just because that's kind of the in thing right now as far as diversity doesn't mean that you can just put those characters in where they don't belong. You can always tell when an author kind of forces these characters in because they have to meet some sort of representation quota. If the characters don't seem like real people when you're reading them, you can tell that the character obviously put there as to to either virtue signal or to just put inclusivity in where inclusivity shouldn't be at any given time. If you're not feeling comfortable writing about a certain character, a certain lifestyle, a certain culture, a certain race, or a certain sexuality, then you shouldn't feel the need to put that in there. Write what you can write. Write what you feel comfortable writing, and don't let society bully you into having to include someone like me in your writing, because chances are, I don't just read gay fiction, I read a lot of straight fiction too, and I read books that don't have a lot of diversity in them, and that's perfectly fine as long as the characters are likable and believable and feel like real people, and the story is good. That's what I'm most interested in. I'm not interested in reading, oh, that's me on the paper. That's me being represented. Not everybody's going to be represented in every book. If that is very, very important to you, then why don't you find authors who represent, your community? Support diverse authors. If you tend to read a lot of gay books, but you read a lot of gay books written by women, by straight women, well, why don't you try reading gay books by gay men? That sort of thing. So just if inclusion and diversity is that important to you, then extend that to who you're buying the book from. Don't just want to see don't just want to see characters on a page to be included. Actually include people who are actually writing these books too. So, but in any case, like I said, just because you're putting token characters in your story does not mean that you're actually improving your writing. In fact, you could be destroying it. You could be pissing a lot of people off by, maybe writing in a stereotype or something that you don't mean to come across in the writing that does. And in this age of hypersensitive Twitter and, all of these people taking a lot of stuff out of context just to cancel somebody, it's probably not a good idea to dip your toes into a pool that you don't know what's at the bottom of it. So, and I mean this for any group of people that you're writing about that you don't necessarily have a good grasp of the community or what their struggles are or what that person is about. It probably, and if you think about it, if you're having a hard time writing these characters, it's probably not your story to tell anyways. So that doesn't mean that you can't have diverse characters in there, that you can't have people of color or people of different sexualities, but just know that if you're going to write these people, that they need to actually be real people on the paper. They need to feel real. They don't need to feel like they were just put there as some sort of a diversity checklist. That they need to feel like they actually contribute and are a part of the story. And they're not given special treatment. They're not treated differently than your other characters that are maybe not quite as diverse either. They need to be treated in just the same way that you would treat any other character on there. So giving special treatment to these characters, or just putting them there just to advance the story, I would just much rather not even see them on the page.
And number 10, the review stalkers. Someone gave you an honest but critical review, and now you're gonna bully them on the internet. Or maybe you're not gonna bully them. Maybe you're gonna cry about it on Instagram Live so your followers can bully them instead. Or actually, maybe you're not gonna do any of that. Maybe you're just going to approach the reviewer for a friendly, healthy discussion. It's a discussion they didn't sign up for, and it's completely inappropriate, but it's friendly. Negative reviews can be really tough. I'd be lying if I said a negative review hadn't ruined my day at some point. But it's your reader's prerogative to review your work, and unless they are being intentionally harmful or they are tagging you in their criticism, their negative opinions are 100% valid.
And her final point, I greatly agree with. I believe there was another booktuber named, I think her channel was Reads with Rachel, and she goes into this quite in depth about how reviews, the review sections are a reader's space. It's not an author's space. Reviews are for readers. Reviews help authors, yes, but ultimately reviews are for people who are would-be purchasers of a product. And like I said before, once you sell your book, it becomes a product at that point. So, it's no different than Amazon. You read the reviews on Amazon and you expect those reviews to be for the actual potential consumer of that item. It's the same with books. You're reading the reviews because you want to see what other people thought of the book. Now, reading the reviews of a book can have a detrimental effect. They can actually kind of spoil the book for you or whatever. Or it can just completely misinterpret the book altogether. I believe I've had my share of 5 stars. They're kind of rare. They're not, I don't have like a whole bunch of 5-star, or I'm sorry, I don't have a whole bunch of 1-star reviews. So that is a good thing. If you've got more 5 stars, if you've got more 4 stars, 3 stars than you do 1 stars and 2 stars, then your book is doing fine. Even if you get that occasional 1 or 2 star review and the reader absolutely hated your book and just rants about it for paragraphs and paragraphs, obviously that reader did not like your book, did not like the story. And guess what? Not everybody's going to like your story. And I've actually given, negative reviews on books that were beloved, that had, 10,000, 20,000, 5 stars. Obviously, people really liked the book. I didn't like it. I'm a mood reader. If I wasn't in the mood to read this book and I didn't like it, I'm not going to give the book a very good review. I don't give books 1-star reviews often. Usually if it's a 1-star, it means I never finished reading it. No, it's usually because I never finished reading it, so it becomes a 1-star at that point. 2 stars are I finished reading it, but I really didn't. I didn't come out of the experience really enjoying it. So, like for instance, I mentioned Wolf Song before. Like I never finished reading that. I got halfway through it and DNF'd it, so it was a 1-star to me. But it's a lot of people's 5 stars. So just because somebody doesn't like your book doesn't mean that it is a bad book, especially if you've got a lot of good reviews on top of it. One of the reviewers, and I won't really mention, I'm not going to mention names or anything else like that, but one of the reviewers who left a review on the Mark of Amuli, for example, it was a 5-star review, and she said that she almost wasn't going to read the book because of the couple 1-star reviews that she read. And in fact, she kind of delayed reading the book because it kind of got in her head a little bit. And then she said, "I'm actually glad that I didn't do that. That I actually ended up reading the book because it became a 5-star read to me. And that sometimes the book reviews are more of a reflection of the reader and their mood at the time than of the actual book itself." So just remember, whenever you're going through and reading the reviews of a book, that you're not just reading the 1-star reviews, that you're also reading, a lot of, if you're reading the reviews, read some of the 5-star reviews, but also, keep in mind that if the book has a lot of 5-star reviews and 4-star reviews, then chances are you're probably going to like the book, And if you have any issues with the content warnings or with the reviews that were negative, like if what was brought up in those negative reviews is an absolute break for you, then yeah, you're probably not going to like the book. So that's another reason why reviews are for readers. If they're reading the reviews and determine, I don't really want to read this book because it has, there's instances in here that I probably will not like at all if I came across it, then yeah, then that means that 1-star review was actually it was good for you to read that, because it kind of saved you from leaving another 1-star review because you didn't also like it. So they can be 1-star reviews can be good just as they are detrimental to your overall score. So I'm going to leave this here because the video has already gone way too long as it is. So if you enjoyed this comment, just like and subscribe, and also if you want to check out my books, go to theliteratebeast.com. I have both of my books are up there. I've got stories, free stories that are there as well. Check out my Patreon. Usually I will post these videos early, or I'll post Patreon only videos, as well as I'm currently in the process of writing the next book of the Mark of Amuli. So I will be posting chapters as I write them on my Patreon for, if people want to read it. Obviously, if you want to wait for the finished product, don't read the rough draft of a book, because it will always end up different by the time a writer is done with it. So, but yeah, just know that all of that is there. If you want to check out more of who I am, give me support. It's always welcome. Anyways, I will talk to you guys later.